And get started with the third webinar in our 4-part webinar series. Looks like we have some more folks joining in. And we are expecting a few more folks, but as I mentioned, we'll go ahead and get started. So as you know, this is the third webinar in our 4-part series. Once again, we appreciate you all joining us this evening and spending time with us to hear more about food insecurity and how it's impacting our communities across the country. So we've gone over the webinar, GoToWebinar instructions with you already, but I do want to again point out some of the main features. So as you can see, we're sharing our screen with you. Everyone has been muted. And we can't see your screen. There is going to be an opportunity for you to interact with the panelists and also Stephanie Hodges, who is the facilitator of this webinar session. We're going to be using the questions box that you see here on the slide. So all of your responses and questions that you have, you can enter into the questions box that you see. We're going to answer your questions at the end of the session. So as we go along, if you want to capture your questions or send in your questions as we go, we will be monitoring the questions. And as mentioned, we will make sure to respond to the questions at the end of the webinar. We know that given the topic and knowing that we have a panelist of PTAs, we do understand that you all have questions, and we are very excited to be able to answer the questions with the group that we have on our webinar this evening. So moving on to the introductions. My name's Dana Taylor, and I'm going to be monitoring the webinar and helping with the reviewing of the responses and the questions that come to the questions box. I am a Programs and Partnerships Manager here at National PTA. And I haven't mentioned this before, so I want to tell you all that I work on a wonderful team, and we're all about making sure that we provide PTAs across the country great programs and resources, and I'm just grateful to be a part of such a wonderful team. So at the end of the webinar, I'm speaking about the Programs and Partnerships Department. I'm going to be sharing some important information with you all about some opportunities that are currently underway, opportunities that you all can take advantage of in your communities and through National PTA. And on the last note, you're going to get a follow-up email from me with a whole bunch of information from this webinar. You should have gotten a couple of emails already. One of the things that is included is a recording of this webinar session. We're going to be sending you any resources that are discussed during this session that we can get our hands on and distribute to you. And most importantly, well, one of the important things too is that we'll be sending you a survey about this webinar. So we would love for you to complete the survey. It'll take about 3 minutes for you to complete. And we really want to have that information so that we can continue to push out great content and great webinars to you all. So thank you so much. And another note is that the webinar is going to be available on National PTA's website. And again, the emails and all the resources we're sending you should be available to you by the end of next week. And I think that is it. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Stephanie Hodges. She's a subject matter expert that we work with here at National PTA, also a health educator. So we're just thankful to her, to be thankful for her and her participation in this series. And go ahead and go, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Dana. I echo your comments about working with a fantastic group at National PTA. My name is Stephanie Hodges, and I am a health educator, and I work on a lot of PTA's Healthy Lifestyles initiatives. So really happy to be a part of this webinar series. I'm now going to introduce the 3 PTAs that we have speaking today on today's webinar. We have Karissa Dollar with Warren Township Council of PTAs in Indianapolis, Indiana. We have Melissa Ward with Sussex Elementary PTA in Baltimore, Maryland. And then we have Asia Mitchell and Stephanie Lynch with Durham Council of PTAs in Durham, North Carolina. On our agenda today, we are going to hear from each one of these PTAs about how they have responded to food insecurity needs within their schools and their communities. We're going to talk a little bit about what that looked like for each of these groups before COVID and now during COVID, and how they're going to continue to work to fill those gaps for their families. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Melissa from Sussex Elementary PTA. Melissa, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Ward, and I am the PTA president of Sussex Elementary, which is just outside of Baltimore, Maryland. So we can go ahead to our next slide, and I'll just tell you a little bit about our school. There we go. So our school is pre-K through 5th grade, and we have approximately 500 students per year. Our ethnic breakdown, as you can see there, is fairly diverse, and we are also a Title I school. Every year, about 75 to 80% of our students qualify for free lunches. So we can go ahead to the next slide. And a little bit about myself. I have been the PTA president for a couple years now. Unfortunately, when I took over, our PTA did not have the best reputation, even though we did have some, of course, wonderful volunteers. But so my first goal was to create a more positive image. And so we did that by being inclusive, reaching out to underrepresented groups, and providing more meaningful programs, which is what we think is really important. And fortunately, our membership has grown, and we have had a great positive impact on our community. Okay, next slide. So unfortunately, a lot of our students rely on the school for the majority of their meals. At our school, all of the students, no matter what their income is, receive a free breakfast. And then any student that would qualify for a reduced lunch actually receives it for free instead of having to pay that reduced lunch payment. And then the PTA and the school have been working together to provide dinner for big evening events. So we do this for things like back to school night and STEM programs. And it's been really great that people can just come to the school, have dinner, and not have to worry about it. And then over the past 4 years, we've had a wonderful event called the Fun and Fitness Fair. Again, where the school and PTA works together. We've been able to get a lot of local produce from some local farms. And so families get to go home with bags full of produce, and then the PTA sets up a table, and we provide ingredients and recipes, and we do things like trail mix or meals in a jar. So families get to come together, they get to make the thing together, take it home, eat it, and then they have the recipe, which has, you know, cost-effective meals and snacks on it. So for our next slide. When it comes to the COVID-19 crisis, we haven't had to pivot too much, but really there have been things that we have tried to focus more on. And the most important thing is to be flexible. And so you really need to make sure you are open to change. You are looking at things from different perspectives, and we're working to figure out what we can do within the current environment. So then keeping communication clear and concise is always super important, and that's within our PTA and also as we spread information throughout our school community. Providing PPE to all of our volunteers is also very important. We want to make sure that all of our volunteers are protecting themselves as well as protecting all of our families whenever they happen to be interfacing with each other. And then ensure privacy for all families. This can be something that can be a sensitive subject. Some people might be embarrassed. Some people might want to feel like they don't want to receive handouts. And we want people to know we understand that because we have been in the same situation as them. We want them to feel comfortable reaching out to us, and most importantly, feel comfortable receiving help. So on our next slide is our process for how we kind of handle the food insecurity. We start with sourcing. And so there are various things within our own school. You can pick up grab and go meals for children 18 and under. Our local church, which is right down the street from our school, has a food pantry. We work with the Maryland PTA, worked with No Kid Hungry, and they provided food and local grocery store gift cards. And then we have also a pandemic EBT benefit that we've been fortunate that our state has sent out. So there's all these different sources from all sorts of different places that you can find and kind of like, you know, bring together to help everybody. So then you want to identify or families with needs. And obviously we do help everybody, but there are certain pockets where, you know, I know that like this particular street in our neighborhood is most likely to have people who need the most help. And then of course, you know, listen to everybody if they come to you and say, hey, I'm immunocompromised, you know, I need assistance. Finding volunteers, and then you just kind of connect all of those things together. So whether it's just providing information, whether it's helping families fill out applications for benefits, whether it's having volunteers picking up and dropping off supplies, so all of those things together. And then of course, announcing your resources. We have our PTA email, and then we also have Facebook and Twitter. And you know, one of those really important things is don't forget to share it. When I post something on my PTA page, I also like it and then share it on my own personal Facebook page, because the more interaction you get with a business post, then the more it's going to be seen throughout the community. So then on our next slide is a list of resources. There are all kinds of great resources all around you, starting with your own school social workers, moving on to the district, and then, you know, you have your county and your state and your local governments. They all have websites and social media. Of course, national PTA, state PTA, and your county council PTAs are all, of course, fantastic resources. And then you have your community food banks, your local nonprofits, you have religious organizations, whether that be churches, mosques, synagogues, a Buddhist temple. A lot of religions believe in charity, but sometimes they don't know who needs help. So if you make that connection and reach out to them, it can be a really great helpful partnership. And then local news is really great. Sometimes you can see that there is something being highlighted, a local store, a local restaurant, something like that, that is doing something special. We had a couple places come together recently in our community, and they did a drive-through chicken dinner. So you could, you know, drive through the parking lot, you could pick up a chicken and, you know, your sides, and then drive off, and then you could have a nice family meal at home. So then lastly, on my last slide, my advice is, on my next, there we go. Sorry for the delay there, everybody. You know, keep your eyes and ears open for any opportunities and resources. You know, just keep looking, keep listening, and, you know, keep finding all of those things and bringing them together. And then stay positive and keep smiling. You know, a little smile can really go a long way. And when you send that positivity out, it really helps your community. Then they are positive with you, and then it just makes things better. So thank you very much. I hope you got a little bit of information. I did see there's a question, and we'll answer that at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. 2 points that I really enjoyed in your presentation were the importance of providing PPE to all the volunteers, and also being really mindful of privacy concerns with families. And I think that's really important, especially for families who have never had to seek help before and find themselves in a really uncomfortable position right now, because for the first time they're having to seek out resources to feed their families. So thank you for sharing that. And we will answer the questions that are coming in at the end. So we're going to move on to our next presenter, and that is Karissa with Sunny Day Community Center and Warren Township Council of PTAs. So go ahead, Karissa.
Hi. The Sunny Day Community Center is a food and clothing pantry that is run by the PTAs in Warren Township in Indianapolis, Indiana. Next slide. So Warren Township is a Title I school district. We have about 63% of our students and their families that are economically disadvantaged. We are a majority minority district, as you can see from our makeup there. And this past year, during the 2019-2020 school year, was our first year as a community eligibility district, which meant that our nearly 12,000 students all received free breakfast and lunch. Students who stayed afterwards for sports or clubs or other activities may have also been able to get free dinner at school. So a lot of our students depend on school for their food. Next slide, please. So in 2013, at the time I was the president of the PTA Council, and I was looking for a way that our council could be making sure that PTA was relevant in our district. I was looking for a way for us to engage deeper in some mission work. So I also work in my district, and I noticed that there were kids who were coming to school who were hungry, who had needs for uniforms and school supplies, and kids who had needs for toiletries so that they were able to come to school clean, confident, and ready to learn. So that year I went before our school board and asked if we could receive space in a building to set up a food and clothing pantry. And we had 2 elementary schools that had been closed and were being underused. And our district granted us space in one of those elementary schools, which was becoming the district's adult education building. So one wing of the building is used for adult ed, and then the area that holds the cafeteria and the kitchen and some of the areas and classrooms that are connected to that became our area to set up our food and clothing pantry. So we developed a mission statement that said to improve the educational impact on children of Warren Township by providing food, clothing, toiletry items, and cleaning supplies to children and their families, and to provide an opportunity for the community to come together in support to help those in need. So as we began to grow, we developed a committee of PTA leaders who took on different areas of the work we were doing. Somebody who was in charge of clothing, somebody who was in charge of food. My job now is the administrative part, so I'm in charge of like check-in and check-out for our families and how we move them through the building. So we're completely staffed by volunteers and led by those PTA leaders. Over the course of 7 years, we have been able to feed over 5,700 families in our district, which was over 30,000 people. We have developed partnerships with 2 different food banks in our area, Gleaners Food Bank and Midwest Food Bank, to provide us with food and supplies on a regular basis. And then we also do a lot of partnering with local service organizations like Kiwanis and Rotary, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and get donations from them, get service hours from them. A lot of the clubs and teams within our high school will come over and volunteer. The athletic director likes for those athletics kids to come over and volunteer. We work a lot with the student council, and the student council usually runs a big drive for us every year. We provide food, toiletries, cleaning supplies, school supplies, and gently used clothing to our families. Next slide, please. So prior to COVID-19, when families come in to get help, we have what's called a farmer's market style setup where they would come in and they would shop off of shelves and tables and pick their own items based on a point system that was based on the number of people in their family. So if you had a bigger family, obviously you were able to get more items than someone who was maybe only a family of 2. So on March 12th, our governor shut down our state, and our first distribution after that was supposed to be 2 days later on March 14th. So we had 2 days to figure out how to shift what we were doing. We needed to ask permission first for the district to still be on campus to utilize the space to pass stuff out because there wasn't supposed to be anybody on campus. And our district gladly approved that so we could stay there and we could help people. We shifted overnight from that farmer's market style to a drive-through model, which meant a lot more work for our volunteers because the volunteers were going to have to now pre-pack everything that we were going to hand out. We would have to bag it, box it, and have wagon loads ready just to go into people's cars as they pulled up. Well, luckily, our teachers and staff really stepped up over the pandemic, and they wanted to come in and volunteer a lot more than they ever have. They were looking for ways to stay connected with the families and with their students. And before we started e-learning, they were looking for something to do, and they wanted to give back to their community. So that really, really helped us meet that need for increased volunteers. We also assisted the district throughout the pandemic with keeping families connected to the district because as they waited in line in their cars for their turn, we were able to make sure they had the information about when e-learning was going to start. How did they get their Chromebook? How did they go pick up their child's medication from school? What's the deal with this pandemic EBT card that I got in the mail? We were able to answer a lot of those questions and keep families connected. And then we also were able to start partnering with another local pantry in our area recently so that we can start providing milk on a consistent basis as well. Next slide, please. So our statistics have changed a lot throughout the course of the last 3 months. Normally, we would serve We're open twice a month, the second Saturday and the fourth Thursday of every month. And normally we would serve about 101 families a month, which was around 546 people a month. And as you can see from the chart, our numbers have really jumped over the last 3 months because we were experiencing a lot more families in need in our area. In April, we peaked out at 215 families that month, which was nearly 1,000 people that we fed. It fell down a little bit in May, back to closer to where it was in March. But right now, with where we're at for June, we feel like we're on track for another increase. We fed 120 families in one day earlier in June. And that was our highest number that we'd had in a single day in the last 4 years. And we actually have volunteers there tonight because we're open this evening feeding people. So I'll be able to see where our June numbers are by the end of the evening. Next slide. So what's next for us? Well, we are applying for the National PTA and TikTok grant that you'll hear a little bit more about here in a minute. We are also hoping that if we get that grant, that it's going to help us with our next big thing, which is going to be moving into a new space. We're about to forge a much stronger relationship with our district because they are going to be opening a community center in another underused building in our district. And they want us to move Sunny Day into that building. We would still run the food and clothing portion of the community center, but the district would offer a whole bunch of other things that our clients could benefit from. The social work from the district would be housed in that building. Our district's police department is housed in that building. There would be access to counseling, to art classes, to parenting classes, access to computers so adults could come in and apply for jobs. And it would put us on a bus route, which will make it much easier for our families who might not have transportation to come and see us. We're also going to be working on kind of getting our name out a little bit more at the beginning of the school year, so that as families come back to school, if there are people who haven't been as connected and they're returning now, that they know that there are opportunities to get help. So we're going to be working on getting some banners and yard signs and other promotional materials out to the various schools in our district to help get more people in. If you're looking at starting something like this in your district, some of the things that I would suggest you do is to reach out and talk to school counselors, to your administrators, to social workers in your area, and find out exactly what the needs are in your community. What specific can you do? Is there a niche that's not being filled? Find out if there are food banks in your area that you might be able to get a grant from, and find out if there are food pantry networks. We are part of a food pantry network where different pantries within our side of town come together so many times a year and offer each other support and ideas and resources and advice. And that was how we got our hookup recently to start providing milk at all of our distributions, because we're now splitting a pallet of milk every other week with one of the smaller pantries in the area. Partner with your high school service groups. We utilize National Honor Society and Student Council a lot for volunteers. And every year they coordinate one of the larger food drives that is done for us. It fulfills their obligation to have service hours every year, and it gives us lots of labor, and it gives those students a chance to give back to their community and see exactly what it means to be a volunteer. We work a lot with local service organizations. We actually received a nice donation from Rotary during the pandemic, and then Rotary then applied on our behalf for a grant from their national organization, and they were able to get us a matching grant. So the Rotarians are going to be coming to volunteer with us in July and bringing the big check along so that we can have a photo op with them as well and thank them for what they did to help us get more money to feed our kids. Also, our local teachers union stepped up during the pandemic and made a very large donation to us as well, because they wanted to make sure during this time our kids were being fed. So I think if this is something you're interested in working on in your area, please reach out to any of us. I'm sure any of the people that are on the webinar would be glad to talk to you about what we're doing in our areas. It's really a great way to engage and empower the families in your community and get them involved in the real mission part of PTA. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Karissa. That was a wealth of information about what you all have done there and what other folks can do. I especially liked the groups that you just listed of who to connect with, because I know we got a question about, if the food banks aren't available, who can we connect with? So I think that was a great resource. I also really liked that you all weren't just providing food, but you were a source of information for a lot of things going on in the schools, e-learning, pandemic EBT, and we got a question about that we'll answer at the end. So I think that just goes to show the heart of PTA and what a reliable, trusted source that PTAs are in their local communities. So next up, we have the Durham Council of PTAs from Durham, North Carolina, and we have Stephanie Lynch and Asia Mitchell. So go ahead, Stephanie and Asia.
Thank you, Stephanie. We are the Durham Council of PTAs, and we are located in Durham, North Carolina. My name is Stephanie Lynch, and I'm the Vice President of Programs. And tonight I'm joined by Miss Asia Purnell Mitchell, our wonderful fundraising chair. Next slide. Okay. Oh. Did you skip one? Nope. Okay.
So our district at a glance, we are made up of 53 schools total. Out of those 53 schools, 44 schools are PTA or PTSA identified. We do have free breakfast across our district in Durham County. So everybody receives free breakfast no matter what their income level is. We have a total of 62.29% of free and reduced lunch. That also includes 13 schools that are community eligible, which means that they're either Title I schools or within the district, the area that they're in, the families there qualify 100% free lunch without any applications taken. Next slide.
A little bit about us. The Durham Council was formed in 1992. In 2019, the Durham Council was the recipient of the Jan Harp Mini Diversity and Inclusion Award. This award was presented to us at the Diversity and Inclusion Breakfast at the National PTA Conference last year. This award recognized the Council as an organization from the board members down to the work we do in the community to drive inclusion, create diverse programs and events, and enable this growth for the future generation. In 2019, we also started a pilot program for a healthy eating grant sponsored by Aetna and National PTA. For this, we hosted 9 tasting events across 3 schools that showcased healthy eating options from a local chef, community partners, and student input. The council presented our findings during sessions at both the 2019 North Carolina State PTA and National PTA conventions. Next slide.
Okay, so within our 53 schools, we have 10 school pantries. Out of those 10 school pantries, 7 are just for students and their families. 3 of the school pantries are for the students, families, staff, and the community. Out of the 3 that are for the families, communities, and school staff, 2 of those pantries are partners with our local food bank, the Food Bank of Eastern Central North Carolina. What that means is that those PTAs have joined in and they pay into the system. They purchase food, they do mobile pantries, they are partners with that food bank. The PTA also provides, the 10 schools that have PTAs, they provide support for the pantries and they get grant funding from local community organizations. The pantries differ, some are weekly, some are monthly, and some are just as need. Parkwood Elementary Pantry, which I am the chair of the Families Missions Committee, and I run that pantry. We pre-COVID served 400 families at 1,300 individual. Post-COVID, as of a week ago, we have a distribution going on right now. We have served so far 852 families at 3,472 individuals. Okay, we as a council working with the schools have hosted 5-week community-wide drive to assist in communities that were affected during the pandemic in January and February of 2020. That 5-week, we got food, supplies, toiletries, and we did weekly distributions to over 300 households. We also promoted local food distributions sponsored by local PTAs and PTSAs. And we just hosted a community event this past Saturday, and we were able to provide food and resources to 192 households at 662 individuals. And within that community, they were really affected by COVID. With here in Durham, North Carolina, our bus systems have been cut in half, where there's only 11 people allowed on a bus, and they're not allowed to bring bags on. So within this community, people didn't have transportation. They weren't able to make it to the grocery stores. And if they made it to the grocery store on the bus, they weren't able to bring their food back. So we saw that this was a great need. They couldn't even go and get the things that they needed. So we decided to go over there and help out. Next slide, please.
Moving forward, exactly how does the Durham Council plan to address food insecurity in Durham? We plan to do this by increasing informed engagement, but still maintaining socially distant settings, partnering with our local food banks, churches, and other community partners to create a true impact while maximizing our efforts. And while we do this, it will not only address local insecurities, but it shows the value and mission of PTA to individuals and families who might not have already been aware of their local PTAs. Next slide. And thank you all for allowing us to share with y'all this evening. Our information is on the slide, and please feel free to contact the Durham Council of PTAs with any questions or feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Asia. It was really interesting to see how you all have been so engaged with your communities and your schools for so long, and now that you're working to help them during this time and seeing the need with the food pantries that you all have hosted for years, and how those can really be impactful now. So we are actually going to move on to the questions portion of our presentation. The first one I want to cover, because it was the first one that came in, is what is pandemic EBT? And pandemic EBT is something that was approved by the USDA. Every state agency that oversees school nutrition programs in the state had to submit a plan to USDA and say why it was needed, which was easy because of COVID, and what they were planning to do to get these benefits to families. Almost every single state in the nation has been approved, and the ones that aren't participating is because they did not submit a plan. They chose not to, but at last count, I think it was up to 46 states. So almost every single one. Some states are doing it a little bit differently. Some you have to go on to a website, put in your information, and then you receive the card. Some are automatically just getting it. So the way you would get pandemic EBT is if your child receives free or reduced price meals, either through the fact that you filled out an application or your child attends a community eligibility school, you are eligible to receive pandemic EBT. And what that is a card, just like a SNAP EBT card, comes to your home and it's preloaded with funds on it every month. And it might have the funds on it up front for the entire summer, because essentially the thought is these children would be receiving these meals in school if school was in, and they would be getting those federal reimbursement dollars for each meal served. So this is just in place of that. So if you are like, I'm pretty sure my state's participating, why haven't I heard of this? You can go onto the USDA site. If you just search pandemic EBT, read a little bit about it there, and always reach out to your district. Your district school nutrition department should have more information if you feel like, oh, my child goes to a CEP school, I should be getting the benefits, or we filled out an application and my child receives free or reduced price meals. Definitely check with them because they can point you in the right direction. Yes, New York was approved, I believe. Somebody asked about New York. So the best thing to do, Dana's going to send around a list of resources, so we'll include that, the pandemic EBT link. But in the meantime, before you get that, reaching out to your school district, whoever your contact is there, is the best way to move forward, because the school should have received information. And then if you can't get anywhere with that, always reach out to your school nutrition director at your local district. Hopefully that's helpful. If you still have questions about pandemic EBT. What if your whole school received free lunch through a grant? So I'm not familiar with any schools operating free lunch through a grant. You might be talking about community eligibility provision, and if that is the case, then yes. If you're in a state, okay, yes. So if you're in a state that the pandemic EBT plan was approved, go onto the USDA site and look at the list of states, and your child receives free lunch because your school's community eligibility provision, you should be receiving pandemic EBT, but your state might require you to fill out your information. So it just depends on a state-by-state basis, and I don't know what every single state is doing, but if you go onto the USDA website about pandemic EBT, you can click on your state and see what the plan is for that state. So I want to move on to a next question we had, and I want the districts that participated today and the PTAs to help me answer this one. Did your school districts continue providing food when schools shut down in March? And did the districts provide food in the summer? So I'll just start with Melissa. If you want to talk a little bit about how you already talked a little bit about how you all served food. If you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing this summer, if your school is operating summer feeding, if you want to start, we'll do Melissa, Karissa, and then the Durham folks.
Okay, yeah, our school, fortunately, our school district is providing meals throughout the summer. So basically what they have been doing is for any child 18 and under, you can go to one of the pickup sites. It's the majority of schools. There's also places like community centers and a couple libraries, I believe, just places, you know, centralized locations all over where you can go and you get to pick up the food. There's no, you know, qualifications. And what they give you is actually, they give you food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, you know, obviously it has to be, you know, like shelf stable type things. So they're not giving out like, you know, ground beef or anything like that. But it is, you know, a really great resource. And I know like most of the families in our area, like we really rely on that, you know, to get through because, you know, for a lot of our families, money was already tight to begin with. And then this has just made things even crazier. So we're really fortunate that we have that.
Warren Township also provided lunches and breakfast for students during the shutdown. They had multiple schools where they had sites set up certain days a week where families could come in and pick those things up. And that was one of the things that we also promoted within the information that we were sharing with families when they came to us, was making sure that they knew when and where they could go get that food. We promoted that heavily on our Facebook page too, because a couple of times the district changed where they were setting things up. They also did a few things in our district where not just at the schools were places to pick that up. They went into a couple of the larger apartment complex areas and the buses would go there and drop off food for kids as well. And then we also, from our pantry, earlier this month, we had a lot of bananas at our first distribution, for example, and we weren't able to pass them all out by the time the night was over, and we didn't want to have them go bad. So we had the district come and pick them up, and then they took those to the feeding sites as well and gave that out with the lunches and the breakfast. So we were actually able to assist with that a little bit. And they do continue that through the summer. Normally our district does do lunches and breakfast. So I think our normal is only lunches over the summer. I'm going to assume since they've been doing the breakfast, they will probably continue that as well.
Hi, so here in Durham County, it has been widespread, everybody working together. So yes, DPS with the Durham Foundation has been pre-summer providing meals at different schools. So on some schools, we have the Monday, Thursday schedule. At other schools, you can go on Tuesday and Friday. And then the ones that you pick up on Friday, you get meals for over the weekend. Our Durham Foundation is also for people who are either positive with COVID or don't have transportation. They have it where they deliver meals every Wednesday and give about 4 days worth of meals for the kids, and then they give family meals so everyone can eat. Also within Durham, the Food Bank of Eastern and Central North Carolina activated a lot of their summer meal sites where community partners would serve summer meals. So that activated late March, early April. A lot of sites came on and started doing the summer meals program early. And now that we're going into summer, of course, the schools have went over to their summer meals programs, which we have that here in DPS. So all of those school sites are still open. Durham Foundation is still passing out meals if people can't get where they need to go. And a lot of our community partners through the Food Bank of Eastern and Central North Carolina have, stepped up, and they're doing meal sites. Also, for the 3 schools that have community open pantries, 2 of them I know are still working through this whole pandemic. Yes, Capitol Boulevard, they are constantly every week still distributing. She serves anywhere from 60 to 80 families a week. They haven't stopped. The school allows her to still have what is called a mobile pantry and provide those meals. So they also do boxes for any families and deliver them if they are COVID positive. Parkwood Elementary has been lucky enough to actually have a community partner, the Parktown Food Hub. And with that, this was something that was put into the works when they noticed with inclement weather, it was hard to serve the community. They have partnered with them. So all of the distributions are being done out of the Parktown Food Hub, which is attached to a local church. And they have started, they beefed up their Monday distributions, and every Thursday, anyone without an appointment or anything could come through and get food from 4 to 6 p.m. And that's not going to stop as long as this is going on. So the only thing is, the community has been great with, working together. So the schools and the PTAs that are already doing this, they're just amping up and trying to work with Durham Public Schools to have more availability of fresh foods.
Thank you all so much for providing that information. And there was one other question, and I know, Karissa, you hit on this a little bit. Someone said, if food banks are not an option for a partnership, what other type of place would you recommend? And from my experience working in food insecurity, food banks right now are incredibly overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed by the amount of people that are coming in. They are understaffed. They are waiting on a lot of government programs and regulations to help them out. So if you reach out to a food bank and you don't hear back, always follow up, but just keep that in mind that they are very, very overwhelmed right now. I think some of the great recommendations like churches, community centers, Rotary, Lions Club, any community organization that you can think of, it doesn't hurt to reach out, but that would be my advice. And there's another comment came in, it says, our school district is facing a big deficit, yet is still making sure our students are receiving meals every day since the closure of all schools in March, and they are still doing it during the summer. And I want to address this because that is exactly right. Every single school district, especially school nutrition programs, they operate based on federal reimbursement of meals. They don't get money from the district. They are dependent on students eating, and a lot of students eating. They are able to look and see what the participation is for breakfast and lunch all throughout the year. They make a budget on that. But this has really thrown a curveball in their budget, and they're still trying to pay staff. They're still trying to pay benefits, and it's really, really hard. Luckily, some of the federal legislation in response to COVID has addressed this and provided money for school districts, but in the CARES Act, there was also another big push for that, and that has passed the House but not passed the Senate yet. So just keep that in mind, and the best way to help them is to get as many kids eating as possible, because they rely on that reimbursement during this time, during the summer, next school year, whatever that looks like. So having as many kids eat as possible so that they can claim those meals for reimbursement is really how to help them out. But there may be other ways as well. So always feel free to reach out to your school nutrition director and just see how you can partner and how you can support them. Another question came in, now with all the closures of businesses and stay-at-home ordinances, it's hard for all of the past local businesses that had helped to help now when they are just starting to reopen. What other programs can we reach out to? And I think that's a really great question. So many of these organizations, businesses that you've partnered with in the past who have been willing to make donations, whether it be monetary or food, just aren't in a position to do that. But see if maybe there's a way that you can partner that will be both beneficial for both of you. Maybe there's ways that you could purchase some items from them at cost. So you kind of have to be very mindful of that when you're reaching out for donations. And I don't know if any of our presenters have other suggestions, but that would be mine. So Melissa, Karissa, or Durham, if you guys have any last thoughts, and then we'll switch over to close out.
So I'm just a bit confused about that. Are you asking as far as like donations of food to do your programs that you had done before, or food for donation of to pass out?
I think both. So typically, people used to reach out to maybe local businesses to help, and now they're not in a position to do so. So if there are ways that you've overcome that or ways that you have partnered with other folks, how has that looked?
So for us here in Durham, one of the big things that we have done is use social media and reach out. We have a way for people who would like to donate, and we just put that, hey, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to feed X amount of kids times the weeks that are going on, and we need to do this for the foreseeable future. And when you reach out to your community, it's been awesome. We get donations from Amazon. We make your wish list and put it out there. Social media is going to be your best friend. For us to overcome that, we had to put it out back to our community. Like, we're supporting the community. We need help. Local businesses that are, I understand restaurants that are starting up. For us, it's been the reverse. Like, we have retail recovery partners through the food bank, like Target. Because Target had to close their eatery down, we receive more meat. And if you go to the stores themselves with your nonprofit, you can also let them know, like, go to those stores that had Starbucks had to close down and they're restarting up. Some of those stores don't have people who are doing retail recovery or picking up. If they don't, they're more than well, here they've been more than happy to make sure that that food doesn't go into the trash. So maybe go reach out to people that you hadn't been working with before and kind of just seeing who's had to close what is reopening, and slowly, because that stuff is still coming into them. They haven't halted. Like, the stuff at Target is still coming in where the Pizza Hut part is, and they're still receiving that food. So I would look into that and check out other stores, but also, like I said, put out on your social media what you're trying to accomplish, and the community will they'll reach back out to you. We've had an overwhelming effect here in Durham. Local businesses and everything, they're pouring in. I mean, people want to help, but they don't know how to sometimes.
Thank you. That's really helpful to know. And I know we're almost or a little over time, so I'm going to turn it over to Dana to do our last little thank you and wrap up.
All right. Thank you, everyone. This was such great information. I want to let folks know that you can, if you have additional questions, please enter them into the questions box. We will make sure that your questions get answered in the follow-up email that you will receive. A couple of follow-up points that were made during the presentation. I know that Stephanie Hodges mentioned that you all can use the school district administration by reaching out to them, whether it's the school nutrition director or the food services director. I would encourage any local PTAs that are on the call to also connect with your district council or region PTA to find out if they have made any efforts with connecting up with school officials, district school officials in addressing food insecurity. I think it's great if you can piggyback off of the efforts that your district council or regional PTA have already been doing. Also, we do have a tasting night toolkit available on our website. I will make sure that that information is sent to you all in the follow-up email. So we are wrapping up. As you see here on our last slide, I know our panelists mentioned the TikTok grants that we have available now. Please visit our website to get more information about that. In addition, our enrollment is open for the School of Excellence program. You can visit pta.org/excellence to get more information. That will also be in the email. And I wanted to give a shout out to Sussex PTA, our first panelist, for being a School of Excellence participant. Thank you so much. And last but not least, everyone, we hope to talk to you all next week, which will be our fourth and last webinar in our series. So again, we hope to chat again with you next week, and we hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.